So let's switch conversations now and have a conversation about COVID-19 in the country and the support that we're getting from our partners and friends from across the globe. The UNDP and the government of Japan, like we were talking about earlier, recently came to the Ministry of Health and they donated this new robot. And the robots are supposed to help in the fight against COVID-19, to be placed at KNH, at the airport, and at Badawi Hospital. They can help in disinfecting some areas. They can also help in checking temperature. They can help in reminding people, passing communication about COVID-19 and what people need to do about COVID-19. And apart from that, the UNDP has also been working on programs to help Kenya get out of this situation that is COVID. All right. So the post-COVID recovery strategy. When we spoke to the governor of Kisumu County, Professor Anyang' Nyong'o, just after they had launched as a Council of Governors the recovery strategy for the counties, and we were going into step by step what is it that the counties have done. They also received support, and he told us that at the point they received support from development partners such as the UNDP as well. So let's have a conversation on what else the UNDP is doing and such other organizations. Joining us on the line now is the UNDP resident representative for Kenya, Walid Badawi. He's on the line. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Thank you so much, Eric, for having me on your show.
Welcome to the Situation Room, Walid.
Thank you. It is quite a situation.
Indeed. Let's start with the situation with these robots. Just explain to when people hear, okay, so robots are going to come and help fight COVID. What exactly is this? So just clear the air and enlighten us about the robots that you donated to the Ministry of Health.
All right. Well, let me introduce you to Jasiri, Shuja, and Tumaini, the three robots that, with the generous support of the government of Japan, and in very strong partnership with the Ministry of Health, UNDP was able to deploy these three anti-epidemic robots. And these robots actually are not the first to be deployed here in Africa. We're actually, as UNDP, provided similar support to Rwanda and to Equatorial Guinea, but also in India. And basically what these robots do is they provide opportunities for the health system to protect its frontline workers, first and foremost, because these robots are able to do things that may and do risk our heroes, our frontline workers, the health workers, by doing rapid temperature testing, they can scan up to 200 people in 1 minute. It's far more efficient and effective. They can disinfect large areas. They can detect, the adherence to government COVID-19 protocols, such as wearing masks and social distancing. But these robots, so they provide that first-hand level of service. But actually, I think they also provide us with an opportunity to explore a whole new realm of potential job creation and knowledge, deepening our insight on the impact of technology and robotics in the field of health. And so for us as UNDP, it's an investment to not just deliver immediate health services, but actually to look at how can we see what these robots can do in the future? What kind of industry can grow around it to actually deliver services through robotics in other sectors? So it's an experiment that I think will give us quite a bit of insight to leapfrog development. But Eric, this is also one of the things that is not the only thing that UNDP is doing in terms of actually spurring the innovation ecosystem in Kenya to see how innovation can be a currency for recovery and development now in the post-COVID-19 era. And I'm happy to discuss many of these other innovative ventures here in Silicon Savannah.
So can we ask you, just looking, this is just about a week or so old in terms of the launch of these three robots and what they're able to do in Nairobi specifically now. How is it going so far? What have we seen in terms of what has been done?
I think these are still early days, as you said. It's 7 days. So since the launch last Friday with His Excellency Honorable Mutai Kagwe and the team at the Ministry of Health, we are now deploying the robots in Jomo Kenyatta International Airport, as you had mentioned in the intro, but also Kenyatta National Hospital and Mbagati Hospital. So the deployment is happening now. The robots are being programmed to adapt to their new environment now in terms of how to function in those physical spaces. We can expect very soon then that, with the presence, for example, of the robot in the airport, that this will encourage a lot of tourism as well, because the backlogs and the lines for the screening and so forth will be significantly reduced. So I think it's going to have impacts on multiple levels. And I think as we look at the deployment, these are some of the things that we'll be assessing very carefully. Also, as a global institution, as I said, we've deployed these in other countries, and so there'll be quite a bit of experience exchange. We've actually, last year, November, deployed an exchange visit together with the Ministry of Health to our office in Rwanda to actually go and see what the Rwandan government has done with these robots and how they have plugged them into the wider national response. So I think these types of exchanges and the learning, which will be constant, not a one-off, will actually inform the constant evolution of how we deploy the robots and work with them.
Walid, do you see this as complementary to human resource, or is it a takeover from human resource? And we've seen questions that have been asked before that when you employ certain forms of technology, that then humans would lose their jobs. So is this complementary or is it a takeover?
No, it's absolutely complementary, and thanks for that question. And I think CS Kagwe addressed that point head on during his intervention at the launch, where he said very directly, this is not a replacement of human resource. This is actually a way to safeguard our very precious human resource, to actually put the robots more in harm's way, if one would put it that way, and actually create so many more opportunities for youth employment. Around the ecosystem of these robots, we've been working with local private companies to actually look at the maintenance and the constant update and programming of these robots for further uses beyond COVID-19. And this is, in my view, very directly creating new vistas of opportunity, of jobs, of learning and knowledge that are not replacing the fundamental human resource where we will always depend.
The argument has merit, and it is the argument that has been used for the longest time, even with regard to automation in other industries. But the direct result has been actually the replacement of human services with the equipment, for the simple reason that, one, you don't have industrial problems with machinery. They do what you program them to do, and they don't usually go on strike. No, they don't go on strike or maternity leave. Then, in industries where they have been used and have been hailed as useful, perhaps, say, for instance, in defense forces or even in agriculture. But even if I talk about agriculture, there's been a problem there. Tea is a very serious commodity in this country because it caters for a very large proportion of how we get our foreign exchange earnings. And every attempt that has been made to mechanize that particular industry, which is the same thing as what we're doing here, has always had the same argument that it will likely make the industry efficient. But if you look at it, the truth of the matter is that it would replace human labor.
Well, let me refer you to our 2015 Human Development Report as UNDP. And this actually looked at human development and the changing world of work. And that really discussed and addressed head-on this issue of automation and what it is, the impact it's having on the workforce, labor, displacement, and so forth. So I will agree definitely that there will be some functions that may become outdated and obsolete as a result of the introduction of robotics. But at the same time, and this is the corollary to that argument, is that this will also create other opportunities that may not be the same exact ones that were being displaced. But just look at the tech sector and look at the fourth industrial revolution. It's called the fourth industrial revolution for the very reason that it has revolutionized how we think and operate. And you cannot deny, and the figures prove, that this has created quite an industry globally and in Kenya as well. And this is where also, we're very pleased, beyond just the robots, to, as I said earlier, working with the Ministry of ICT, Innovation and Youth Affairs, and many other stakeholders in the innovation ecosystem, trying to surface through our accelerator lab, which is here in Kenya, all sorts of new innovations, apps, technologies, solutions that may not all be about technology. They could be basic, mundane things, but are actually helping to change people's lives. Now, that's the type of intervention that we need to be incentivizing. Those are the types of initiatives that we need to be supporting financially and technically, and linking them to the market so that those innovators are actually able to see the fruits of those the innovations, whether it's an app that's helping connect plumbers and electricians to end users in a much more efficient and effective way. Now, the app is just the backbone. You still need the carpenter, you still need the electricians, you still need, all of those craftsmen in whichever fields to deliver those services. So technology is, in my view, very clearly not a replacement, but there will be a need to invest also in social protection programs. There will, as I said, be some that may be displaced, hopefully temporarily, until they're able to also retool themselves. Learning is a constant thing. It's not that you just go to school until you graduate and stop learning after that. This is what I think societies need to also become much more agile in constantly adjusting to the new normal. And that includes keeping up with the developments in the fourth industrial revolution.
Do you think it needs more than just saying that it's important for such investments to take place? We must understand that a lot of these technologies will come into societies that have been historically traditional in the way in which things have been done, right? A society whereby the 8 to 5 people actually sitting behind a desk is what then is looked at and considered work. So do you think that the messaging around this, as we think about new technologies, new media, new things like this, the messaging must be much stronger than the actual operation?
No, both are important. It's not an and or. I think as we look to the whole innovation ecosystem, from the policy side to the investment side to the skilling side to the actual enabling environment to allow these innovations to actually be invested in directly, to the mindset and behavioral changes that need to go with it. It's not just an and or, it's actually all of these together. So the ecosystem approach to looking at how these innovations are going to change the way we do things is also quite key. And so that's why, as I said about these robots, this is a pilot. It is an experiment. It is a way that we will actually have very direct learning from the impact that this is having on that transformation of the health sector in this case, through the introduction of these robots. So it's not just a replacement function. It's really actually a learning process, and we hope that will inform, and Minister Kagwe has been quite clear that he says he wants to be organizing a conference later in the year to look at the future of the health sector, and we're discussing as UNDP how to support that. So the learning that will come from this here in Kenya, but also beyond that, would be a way for us to begin to internalize the varying implications, what it means for education, what it means for mindset shifts, as I said, and what it means for the policy environment to incentivize and ensure constant investment in these types of innovations.
Walid, apart from this one, the robot and the donation that was given by you and the government of Japan, there are also other programs that UNDP is involved with in terms of looking at the socioeconomic impact of COVID-19, the economic recovery strategy that the government has come up with. Where do you plug into that recovery strategy, both at the national level and the county level?
Thanks for that. Yeah, absolutely. UNDP actually, maybe more broadly beyond our interventions in the innovation space, as part of a global mandate given to UNDP to technically lead the UN system at the country level to actually support the development of what we call socioeconomic response plans for the UN. This was introduced and launched in June last year, and since then UNDP, with the rest of the family of the UN agencies and their 23 UN funds and programs, agencies, funds and programs here, we've actually supported the country in developing the post-COVID economic recovery strategy under the leadership of the National Treasury and State Department of Planning, but also the county level socioeconomic re-engineering and recovery strategy, which was launched by His Excellency the President in December. So we provided both technical and financial support to both these processes, and our view here and what we are bringing into this process was to ensure that the global thinking and the global frameworks that the UN has come up with for responding to the socioeconomic impacts of COVID actually first and foremost address the most vulnerable. So defining those, assessing who they are in different countries, making sure that then the interventions that the country, the government, the different stakeholders, private sector as well, and the UN system actually are tailored to this. So we were very directly involved, thanks to also generous contributions from other development partners here, including Finland, Sweden, Italy, Norway, and others, to actually support the development of these frameworks. So we played a very key role. Now, how do we situate this? Innovation is a key part of those strategies. So again, the linkage to the innovation ecosystem as a driver to build forward better is already envisaged in those plans. But what is central here is that we also remain cognizant of the Sustainable Development Goals that have been set back because of COVID. We've seen for the first time since we've started measuring human development a major drop in 2020, and we need to bring that back on course. Just very, very quickly, perhaps, these socioeconomic response plans focus essentially, the UN's socioeconomic response plan focuses on 5 areas. Health first. So we need to continue investing in health care systems and providing immediate healthcare support, because COVID-19 is a health challenge in its first instance. But we also have to continue to protect people. And here, social protection, and how do we extend social protection schemes to the most affected, be they informal workers. We know Kenya is 84% informal. The informal economy constitutes about 84% of the labor market here. So how do we ensure that those informal workers are reached? And we have innovative initiatives with the National Hospital Insurance Fund, the International Labor Organization, to come up with ways to reach those particular communities as a way of implementing this.
When you say you have plans, do you measure your success by simply putting in place plans that work, or do you also look at the outcomes?
No, we look very much at the outcomes.
So can you tell us a bit about the successful outcomes of some of these initiatives that you have put in place?
Well, I mean, first of all, these plans definitely in themselves as a first instance become part of it. If we now look at then what happens post these plans, for us it will be how then do they factor into the country's planning processes, the county's planning processes, and from there, obviously, the linkage to budgets, because these plans will only be implemented when the national resources will be aligned to the priorities therein. So we will work through various other programs that we have to monitor closely those allocations. We know the fiscal constraints that are happening now. So part of how we will also measure ourselves is also to see how we're supporting the country to look at the whole spectrum of resources available to it, not just international development finance and official development assistance, but private investments. How do we start to measure the alignment of those resources to the implementation of the plans? We would look at stakeholders. Are these plans bringing the right stakeholders to the table? Do we have robust coordination mechanisms at national, subnational level that really are not just about government sitting in its corner and the private sector sitting in its corner, because these plans will only be implemented through SDG 17. So we will look at, for example, the robustness of those vehicles and platforms to bring those players together.
Thank you very much. Walid Badawi is the UNDP resident representative in Kenya. He's been talking to us about the UNDP's support for Kenya during this COVID-19 period and very many other projects that you're running with. We'll be speaking to you again soon, Walid, and we wish you a great day.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.